15,000 tons. That's the weight of a single concrete block about to be lowered into open water off the coast of Singapore. Get its position wrong by even a few centimeters, and every unit connected to it afterward inherits that mistake for the rest of its working life. This is Tuas. When it's finished, it's designed to move up to 65 million shipping containers a year, using driverless vehicles and automated cranes, with almost no human hands on the ground. But right now, none of that works, because the ground it's supposed to stand on doesn't exist yet. Much of this port is being created where there used to be sea. On one side, engineers are building land upward, out of the ocean. On the other, they're dredging the seabed downward, carving out deep water for some of the largest container ships on Earth. And in between, they're engineering an entirely new coastline, from scratch. So how do you build solid land in the middle of the sea and make it stable enough for one of the world's most automated container terminals? The answer starts below the waterline. Singapore's container operations have always been split across multiple terminals. Every container moved between them costs time, manpower, vehicles, and road capacity. Tuas is the fix. One enormous site on the western edge of Singapore, with enough room to run the entire port system from a single location. When the full build-out is finished in the 2040s, Tuas is planned to have 66 berths, roughly 26 kilometers of berthing frontage, and a capacity of 65 million TEUs a year. That's not just a bigger terminal. That's enough new space to reorganize an entire national port system, built almost entirely from reclaimed sea. And Phase 1 alone shows exactly how hard that is. Its works covered 414 hectares. 294 hectares of that became brand new reclaimed land. More than 500 American football fields pulled straight out of the ocean. But you can't build a container port by just filling shallow water until dry ground appears. A terminal needs two opposite things, right next to each other. Stable land, for everything above the shoreline, and deep water immediately beside it, for enormous ships. So engineers had to build both at the same time, raise the land, deepen the water, and place a permanent wall between the two. That wall is the caisson. The Phase 1 caissons are massive reinforced concrete cellular structures. A typical unit, roughly 40 meters long, 28 meters wide, about 28 meters high, almost 10 stories, and each one weighs around 15,000 tons. Roughly the weight of 10,000 cars. That's the number from the very beginning. 15,000 tons, lowered into the sea, again and again and again. But each caisson isn't one solid block. Inside are large hollow cells, boxed in by reinforced concrete walls, a structure engineered to be enormous without being unmovable, because eventually it has to move. The caissons are prefabricated close to the project site. Slip-form construction lets their tall concrete walls rise section by section. Then it happens again. One caisson, another, then another. This isn't one giant concrete monument. It's industrial repetition at marine scale. But even the strongest caisson is worthless if the ground underneath can't hold it. Picture setting a 10-story concrete tower down onto an uneven ocean floor. A small error in level or support gets far more dangerous when hundreds of these units have to connect into a single, continuous wall. So, before a single caisson touches the water, engineers prepare the seabed itself. They dredge it, trim it, place rock to build a foundation, compact that rock, survey the geometry, underwater to check it. The giant concrete wall doesn't begin at the waterline. It begins on a prepared foundation on the seabed. Only then can the caissons go in. Completed units are floated out to sea and carefully positioned directly above their prepared foundation. Then submerged, not dropped into soft mud, positioned, lowered, supported, secured. Then the next one arrives. By the end of Phase 1, 221 caissons, together forming about 8.6 kilometers of seawall and wharf. One concrete block became a line. That line became kilometers of permanent coastline. And the coastline stopped being just geography. It became infrastructure. Now there's a boundary. Deep water on one side, empty space for new land on the other. So the next operation begins: reclamation. And here's where the simple version of this story falls apart. Tuas wasn't built by just dumping endless loads of clean sand into the sea. More than half of Phase 1's reclamation fill came from reused material, dredged seabed, and earth excavated from other projects on land. Even the hard rock recovered from dredging got reused, which cut demand for brand new fill. But creating land and creating good land are two very different problems. Some of the reclaimed material was clay. Underneath it, compressible marine soils, still fully saturated with water, even though the sea on the surface was already gone. And that created the real engineering problem. Settlement. A container terminal puts enormous weight onto the ground below it. Pavement, container stacks, cranes, vehicles, infrastructure. When that weight presses down on saturated, fine-grained soil, the water trapped inside has to escape. As it drains out, the soil particles pack closer together. The ground compresses. That's consolidation. And the real danger isn't the port sinking into the ocean. It's uneven movement. One section settling more than the section right beside it. Grades shifting, pavement cracking, drainage failing, infrastructure drifting out of alignment. And above all of it, Tuas is built for extremely precise, automated operations. A driverless vehicle can know exactly where its digital route is supposed to be. But that precision falls apart fast if the physical ground underneath keeps moving unpredictably beneath it. So engineers did something that sounds backwards. They deliberately loaded the ground before the port ever could. One major technique in Phase 1 combined two things: prefabricated vertical drains and surcharge. The problem inside soft clay is water, and the problem with that water is distance, how far it has to travel to escape. Slow drainage means slow consolidation. Prefabricated vertical drains cut that distance down, creating shorter escape paths through the compressible ground. Then engineers pile on temporary extra weight at the surface. The surcharge. That added pressure squeezes the saturated layers. Water moves toward the drains. The escape path is shorter. The ground consolidates faster. The drains don't turn clay into rock. The surcharge doesn't make settlement disappear forever. The goal is more practical than that. Force most of the expected settlement to happen now, while the terminal is still a construction site, instead of later, underneath live cranes and autonomous vehicles. Load the ground before the port loads it. And then they measure everything. Engineers didn't just place the surcharge and wait for a date on a calendar. Settlement markers tracked movement at the surface. Other instruments measured deformation deep underground and changes in pore water pressure. One question mattered. Is the ground behaving the way the design predicted? As settlement slows and pore pressure shifts, engineers can judge whether enough consolidation has actually happened to move forward. They didn't just wait, they measured. And that's the hidden link between geotechnical engineering and automation. Before an autonomous vehicle can follow a precise digital route above the terminal, engineers first have to control how the ground beneath that route moves. Singapore's own project documentation is explicit. The reclaimed ground had to meet stringent stability requirements, specifically for driverless automated guided vehicles. The technology above only works because the ground below was engineered first. Once that ground is ready, the full system becomes easy to read. Behind the caisson wall, the reclaimed terminal platform. In front of it, deep berth water. For Phase 1, engineers deepened the seabed, so future container ships could pull right up to the quay. The planned deep-water berths can handle ships with drafts of roughly 21 meters. That's an extreme change over an extremely short distance. Heavy industrial land on one side, deep navigable water on the other. And between them, a wall of massive concrete caissons standing on a prepared underwater foundation. Long, finger-like sections of land extend that edge even further, creating additional berth frontage. So ships can work along more of the terminal at once. But eventually, all of that marine engineering disappears beneath something far more familiar. A working port. Drainage and utilities go in. Roads and yard surfaces get built. Key cranes rise beside the water. Container handling systems fill the yard. Automated guided vehicles start moving cargo. The transformation is complete. Open water became an engineered edge. That edge held reclaimed ground. The ground was consolidated. And the finished platform became an automated terminal. And Tuas isn't finished. It's operating, while construction keeps happening around it. As of August 2026, Tuas Port has 14 operational berths. Since operations began in September 2022, it has already handled 25 million TEUs. PSA says it's on track to reach 18 operational berths by 2027, and the larger project keeps expanding. Phase 2 adds another huge reclaimed area and another major caisson seawall. Its current design uses 227 caissons, along roughly 9.1 kilometers of seawall. Earlier in 2026, Singapore reported that Phase 2 reclamation was close to 80% complete. Planning for Phase 3 is already underway. The complete 4-phase development runs into the 2040s, which means Tuas exists in 2 states at the exact same time. It's already a fully working automated terminal, and it's still one of the largest active marine construction sites on Earth. From above, the finished port looks almost effortless. A ship pulls up to the berth. A crane lifts a box. An automated vehicle carries it into the yard, but cut straight down through the ground, and the real project appears. Below the pavement, reclaimed material. Below that, compressible layers, whose settlement had to be accelerated and measured one instrument at a time. At the edge, the caisson wall. Below each massive structure, a prepared underwater foundation. Beside it, the seabed, falling away into deep, navigable water, and above all of it, a port whose precision depends on every single layer underneath, behaving exactly as engineered. No single team could have built that system alone. Surveyors defined the geometry. Marine crews worked on and below the water. Concrete teams reproduced enormous caissons again and again. Geotechnical engineers predicted and monitored the ground itself. Terminal engineers turned that ground into working infrastructure. And every one of those systems had to meet at exactly the same coastline. That is the real engineering achievement here. Not one robot, not one giant ship, not even one 15,000-ton caisson. It's the coordination of an entire land and sea system at industrial scale. Dredge where the water had to run deeper, build where the land had to push outward, reuse material wherever possible, accelerate settlement before the permanent loads ever arrive, measure the ground until its behavior became predictable, then build the port on top of it. Singapore's future port didn't begin with autonomous vehicles or giant cranes. It began below the water, with a seabed that had to be completely reshaped, with massive concrete structures that had to become a brand new coastline, with marine mud that had to become usable ground, and with settlement that had to happen before the machines ever could. The automated port is what the world sees. The engineered ground is what makes it possible.